Before you invest in apartments and trying to sink in so much of your hard earned money, you should know these, especially for those of you who are mostly inclined in buying already on the market apartments. I'm not an engineer, so I'm not going to go into the architecture designs or quality. I'm going to focus on this concentration on discussion on about the financial aspect of which that is my specialty. These apartments are 4 units. It's a two-bedroom apartment. They are in Kulambiro. They bring in an income each of 1.5 million, which means for 4 units that is 6 million. They are being, that's at gross level before any costs or anything. They are being advertised for 800 million. And when I did the inquiry, they said the seller would go at a lowest of 750 million. Now, I'm addressing a person who would want to buy this and how you should evaluate this kind of investment specific to this. Think about it this way. You know, they are in a prime location. They have enough spacious parking lot. They look good. They have a few things they would have to repair here. You know, as you can see, but they have enough space for the car parking. An attractive investment, but literally you are buying them for 800 million for them to generate just 6 million a month or around 72 million in a year. At this point in time, does that make sense? That means that takes us to the question of the financial aspect of every investment. The emotional side of people investing in apartments and rentals is almost 100%. Most times people invest in this from the emotional side of it. They take off the emotional aspect because it makes a man or a woman to say that is mine. I own that apartment block. You can look at it. It's not the high end, but it's a good end that anyone would be like, that is mine. But the financial aspect is what we're going to focus on for you to conclude and say, does it make sense for me to buy apartments of that nature? If you have followed me enough, you know about this tracking, the discounted cash flow for real estate. This is to say where someone gets around 800 million and put it into the investment, of which we have already established it's going to be making around 72 million a year. But we do certain assumptions. The first assumption we put in is that every single year they are going to increase the rent by at least 3%. Now, we know practically that is impossible, but at least we can assess that if you increase it 3% per year, it means in 3 years, that is 10%, which means that is realistic every 3 years to put in a 10% increase in rental income. That's what happens. Then I'm going to assume the person who owns these apartments is not paying rental tax for the sake of the conversation. Let's be realistic. Very few people do, but they have to incur costs monthly in terms of repairs, in terms of security, in terms of all the other costs. Let's assume all of them take around 10% every single year. So that means their total income every year is in this column, the green column, right? The 64 million, 66, like that. That if you buy the apartments as they are at 800 million and you are going to be making this amount of money, it means by the end of the 10-year period, let's assume you are investing it for 10 years, because I'm looking at this for people who are now investor aware. They have an investment element. They must assess in 10 years what is my return, right? And so in 10 years, let's assume you can sell those same apartments after you have got all the money for around the standard 900 million, or even if we are to put this to a billion, actually let's make it a billion, that after 10 years everything you do some repairs, you're going to sell it a billion. But for you to sell them to a billion, you might have to do some repairs here. Let's say you put in a repair of 50 million, right? So that means your net income after that is 750. At gross level, the total amount of money you would have earned is just 600 1.6 billion. So that means for someone who put in, this is the total revenue at gross level. So for you who invested in 100 million or 800 million, means your profit is 808 million. Not bad whatsoever. But is it better? And two, in the first year, as you can see, you're going to be making a net return of 64 million. So that means your first return is of 8% only, right? It gets better as years going. This is the net return in 2025, 2026. You know, if I'm to do this and I make them general and I drag them down here, so if I make that, you know, so that means we are saying that is the net return. Then as years goes by, it gets up improving, but you can see in the first 5 years you're at 9%. Then for me, someone who should know better should be in a position to come and say, what would I get if I'm to invest in a treasury bond? We are saying 10 years, 10 years. So that means someone who has around 800 million to invest, they can right now get a bond of 870 actually, because the interest rates right now are good, right? Oh, it's 860. And I'll explain to you why. Yeah, but because we're trying to maximize this, that's the perfect. Now, if you have the cost of 800 and you go to buy a bond right now, you get a total bond of 865 million for the 10 years. It can get better for 20, 15 years and 20 years, but we're talking about the bond which matures in 2034 to make sure the comparative of the bonds and the real estate is the same. And the bond rate now of 864 pays you 61 million per year before tax or 55 million after tax, which means that bond is paying you times 2, it's paying you 110 fixed a year. So if I come and I get this and I bring it here in my discounted cash flows and I say, okay, here we are all investing 800, you know, I'll make it bigger, and then okay, I have to come back this side to get that. So in all those years we're going to get just exactly that. This is 2025. Yes, so then here we are going to be given 865 million. You see, it means for us, the only cost we are going to pay in the treasury bond world is the 10% withholding tax. That is standard, very standard. Nothing goes on from there, you know. That is the only tax you're going to pay, the cost you're going to pay. The other money is yours, which means you are making around 99 million. In the first year alone, you're making 99 million when the person is only making 64 million. You are already 30 million over and above their investment. Both of you had the same money. By the time you are done, it means you have close to, you can see 1.7. Actually, I might have forgotten something. How many are these? 99. Yes, I'd forgotten. Here, this is the return plus divide by 2 because you get more money from there. So you're going to get 1.8 million because remember at the time when it matures, they give you your money plus the original, the last coupon. So all of a sudden, Someone by the time they've got 1.8, close to 1.9, and this is before compounding, right? So the person who has invested in a treasury bond, they are going to get close to 1.8 billion without doing anything, without any stress, without nothing, but by just investing in a 10-year bond, compared to the person who is invested in a treasury bond in an apartment, and they have to go through all the stresses of the apartment to come up with the 1608. And when we are to take it better to say, let's assess these investments based off the facts of the discounted cash flows and the net present value. That means the person who invested in the rent is going to get a 200, a net return of 298k million. Let's round it to 3 billion, to 300 million. While this person is going to get a net return of 467. That means the person in the treasury bond is almost getting 200 million over and above you before anything, before compounding, and before the struggles that you might go through with your rent. That if we come to these apartments right now, as it is happening, and we add in the tax element, remember I didn't add in the tax element, and we say let's call it even the tax element 10%, and we say every single year you'll have to pay 10% tax, you know, then all of a sudden your return goes down to just 1.5 and your net return goes back to 240. 240, and the actual profits before discounting and before anything is 735. Yet the person who has gone to the bonds, their actual investment, their actual profits is over a billion, because they invested 800 million, they are getting around 1.8 billion. So it means 1.8 billion minus 800 is 1 billion. So then why would you want to invest in apartments? The numbers don't make sense. Of course, there are times when it makes sense to invest in apartments. So if all the money you have is your salary or you have inherited something, don't dump it into apartments. Leave the rich people, they will construct for us apartments. Leave it to the government, they will find us apartments. It's okay to rent. You grow your money. Put your money in a treasury bond, put your money in a unit trust, it will make more money. And why are we talking about this? It's about the return. It's about understanding that the treasury bonds are giving you a 14% return, while the apartments is giving you an 8% return. So that means you're making more money, almost double, in the treasury bond, while the person in in a unit trust is making in an apartment is making just 8% return. The emotional stress of the months when you don't have a tenant who doesn't pay you anything, those are there. The risks are higher in real estate than they are in the treasury bonds. So when you think of all these factors, especially those people who are trying to invest and maximize their return, like I said in the other video, that apartments will make you money, but they're not going to make you more money compared to the products we have on the market right now. As you can see, the person who has 800 million and they put it in a in a treasury bond, a 10-year bond alone, they're almost going to be making close to 100 million every single year. You know, 100 million every single year. That same person, if they put it in a 20-year bond, it can even get better. You know, if someone has a 70 and 800 million right now, they would have to get a bond of 800, almost 80, and they will be making close to 118 million before after tax for the same amount of money. Then why would you put your money in apartments? The pricing of apartments is making them very, very unattractive. The pricing of apartments is what's making them very unattractive, which makes the yield terrible, which makes them not a good investment. Thank you.